between Andrea Rovinsky and Niko House, two popular internet personalities who aren't afraid to share their opinions loudly and agreed to come do it here tonight with each other and for everyone's benefit. We're going to get into some of the topics that have kind of been hot and divisive on Twitter lately, especially left Twitter, and just kind of like get some different views and hopefully, I don't know, find some things out. Maybe see some differences, maybe see a little common ground. We'll see. So yeah, please welcome our two debaters who were so nice to generously give their time to do this tonight. Niko House is the founder and former president of Carolina Students for Bernie Sanders and the former acting state director of Bernie's 2016 campaign in North Carolina. Also a former surrogate for Jill Stein's 2016 run and Tulsi Gabbard in 2020. A political strategist, analyst, and the founder of the Mi Casa es Su Casa network. Thank you for joining us, Niko.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. And Andrea Rovinsky is a political YouTuber and sometimes speedrunner. She has done anti-fascist organizing as well as political canvassing for progressive electoral races, including Bernie Sanders' presidential race. She is the creator and host of the daily YouTube show Above It All. Thank you, Andrea, for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. So basically tonight we're going to be discussing three main topics. The topics that we're going to go through are force the vote, Donald Trump's ban from social media, and can the Democratic Party be reformed? Assuming we have enough time for that last one, that we don't run long. We're also going to make sure we have a little bit of time at the end for audience questions. So towards the end of the segment, especially, get your questions out and I'll be looking for them and I'll try to get at least a couple of really good questions out there. We may not have time for a ton, but so give me your best ones. Is really what I'm saying.
Spend the whole show thinking.
And for y'all, for each topic, Niko and Andrea, you're going to have 2 minutes to present like your basic opening argument for each one, like where you stand. And then we'll get into the rebuttals back and forth. We'll try to keep rebuttals to roughly 1 minute. I'll do this if you're running long at any point, and we need to keep things moving. And also, if things get way too off topic or like into like personal attack kind of territory, I will ask y'all to kind of move it back to a productive political discussion if possible. And I'm just going to mention that as well. But if things go way off the rails, hey, I'll just blame Antifa. Without further ado, let's get into the first topic. Was force the vote the right decision? This is something a lot of people have been thinking about, talking about. Force the vote was something that a lot of people put time, thought, passion, energy into on different levels. Some people positive, some people negative. Y'all were kind of on different sides of the force the vote issue. So let's get into it. Let's start with Andrea for this one. Where do you stand on force the vote roughly in 2 minutes? And was this like the right decision?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to start this by saying that the entire force the vote strategy, to my interpretation, was to withhold a vote for speakership unless you get the concession, in this case, to vote on Medicare for all. Now, the speaker has already been elected, and therefore, this is a past tense conversation. Now, I just wanted to foreground that. So as far as whether or not it was the right decision, I think personally that forcing a specific votes can be very, very, very good and very, very strategically applied. In this particular instance, I do not think Medicare for all was the #1 priority to go after. I would have rather gone off on to more stimulus packages, housing guarantees, maybe a jobs guarantee, something like that. Because I think right now where 40 to 50% of renters are facing eviction if a moratorium is lifted, I do think a housing rights platform would be a better situated thing given the current climate. So that would be my main critique of force the vote. But my alternative little viewpoint on that is that I think a lot of the people driving force the vote are, I think, doing a disservice to the strategy by getting involved in personal drama online. And that's been a lot of my critique.
All right. Thank you. Niko, please take a couple minutes to just go over your force the vote stance. Also, you're muted. Yeah, you got to unmute yourself.
I'm glad that I got in without any mistakes, at least. There you go.
It's down at the bottom of the StreamYard page. Let's see. Oh, it says your mic isn't connected? What the heck? We had sound at the start. Niko, maybe try leaving and rejoining through the link, and let's see if we can get your mic reconnected. Sorry about that, folks. We literally did like 10 minutes of sound check before we got this even started. It's so, so of course it's this way.
We can edit this part out.
Yeah. Well,
wait, this is live. Oh no.
Well, it's live, but also we'll edit it out when we make the nicer
super.
version. Okay.
Okay, now we're echoing. That's weird. That's weird too.
Let me.
Am I logged in twice?
Yeah. Hold on. There we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're good.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. We got that sorted out. I think that will be good from here. Niko, once again, to remind you, 2 minutes on was forced to vote the right decision.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we got that squared away, yeah, absolutely. Forced to vote was the right decision. I mean, it goes without being said that right now we're in a pandemic that has not only affected people just by strictly dying from COVID, but the reverberating effects of having a crippled healthcare system. Not only can we not afford to not have Medicare for all or single payer healthcare right at this moment, but we can't afford for something else to like this to come down the line and then us still not be prepared. It's very similar to like the economic crash of 2008. It's not that like, yeah, that was a big deal, right? But the bigger deal is the fact that our economy is about to crash again, and we never really did recover from the 2008 crash. And potentially that's what we could see with our healthcare system. As far as what you were saying about the rental crisis and things like that, this is actually an argument presented by David Sirota. It wasn't that we should do that first, is that, well, healthcare is the conversation right now. And because of that, now you can attach all of those different issues, rent coverage, stimulus checks. The moratorium is something that needs to be obviously extended. But like, we still have to deal with the fact that there are senators and Congress people right now and people in their localities in different states that are actually not enforcing the moratorium that Trump actually put in months ago. They're allowing people to get evicted. They're allowing their police departments without penalty to evict people illegally. And so but we can attach all of that stuff to force the vote. And in fact, in my opinion, that bolsters the argument for why they should have done so. If the progressive movement, as far as the legislature is concerned, has literally never, ever had as much power as it did that day. People have not caught on to this yet for some reason. Everybody remembers the abstentions took a bunch of votes away, and then eventually the Democrats ended up voting mostly for Nancy Pelosi, but she only needed about 214 instead of 218 because of abstentions. Now, if you all recall, initially AOC, Barbara Lee, and Cori Bush voted to abstain. Now that took those votes away. McCarthy actually won the first round of voting. Now, that means 3 progressives had the ability to stop Nancy Pelosi dead in her tracks. And at the end of the day, is it really better or worse to have McCarthy if you, like, what's they going to say about, oh man, McCarthy's so bad, he won't give us healthcare in the middle of a pandemic? Like, that's the worst threat? Well, if Nancy Pelosi's not going to be that, then use the leverage, because at the end of the day, we do know she is concerned about maintaining her power. And if we can use that to our advantage, then we should. And as far as the messenger, I feel like that guilt by association argument or the messenger argument is fallacious, because Jimmy, the person who started the movement, he went after Mark Pocan, and then everybody started going after him because Justin Jackson tagged the football player from LA, tagged AOC and asked, why wouldn't do this? And AOC didn't realize that Justin Jackson had been in contact with Jimmy, and Justin went on to Jimmy's show, and then it became AOC versus Jimmy. And AOC made an AOC versus Jimmy, and other people made AOC versus Jimmy. But actually, Jimmy went after Mark Pocan first and not the squad. And until AOC was already making excuses as to why she would vote for Nancy Pelosi regardless, that's when it started getting a little bit dramatic. But in my opinion, that means we should be going after the people who are taking this and making this about one person who constantly and consistently said it wasn't about him. And everybody was defended for it to vote, said it's not about Jimmy. Why we keep bringing up Jimmy? But if we can't, if we're going to say that is like not we got to shoot the messenger and then kill the movement because the messenger died, like because he's not a good person or whatever. Like, no, a good movement is a good movement, and we should be correcting people who are using ad hominem reasons to discredit and discount the entire movement for healthcare in the middle of a pandemic, rather than trying to say that we should ignore the movement merely because of the messenger, as if the movement itself is flawed.
All right, Andrea, do you have a response to any of that? It looked like you had something you wanted to say there.
I often look like I have things I want to say, but I think one of my main strategic disagreements with conversations on forcing the vote is a lot of conversations get bogged down with reiterating and enforcing the policy aspect. I do believe we both are Medicare for All supporters. So as far as we are in a pandemic and X amount of people die every year, I understand that. I'm a Medicare for All supporter. I canvassed for Bernie in the primary, so that was my whole thing. So I think if we can just set aside talking about the policy and just focus on the strategy, that would be a better thing going forward. And also the thing about Kevin McCarthy versus Nancy Pelosi. I do believe there is a degree of difference between those two. I think having Kevin McCarthy be the Speaker of the House, especially given what happened last week, would have been a very dire situation, in my estimation, compared to what Nancy Pelosi is doing, which, by the way, I will say is not enough. However, the response to the recent debacle proves that I do think she would have been a better choice than Kevin McCarthy. I just don't.
Tell me why you say that?
As far as the recent events, or just in general?
I mean, a little bit of both.
I would be shocked if Kevin McCarthy would push for impeachment in the same way Nancy did. Now, I do think we should have impeached him on the day of. We should have probably done it as soon as the Electoral College was certified. That's my opinion. But I don't think Kevin McCarthy would have done that. And also, again, the degree of separation between a Republican and a Democrat is, I do think, very relevant to these discussions, because last time I checked, there are a bunch of Democrats that do support Medicare for All. However, to my understanding, I could be wrong. I think there's 0 Republicans that support Medicare for All. And I could be wrong. And if someone new just came in, feel free to let me know. But I think having a Republican speaker would definitely stifle anything going forward. Now, I do know that I think it's possible for them to re-vote for speaker down the line. I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm not an expert on the legislative law. And if that's get Kevin McCarthy in there for 3 months and then try to get him out or something, if that was part of the strategy, I didn't hear it. But I do think the idea of having Kevin McCarthy over Nancy Pelosi is a little bit of I think an interesting take in my estimation.
So can I respond?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is actually no distance, no space whatsoever between Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy. And that actually should be understood. The things that you would think that they would disagree on may be marginal. And it's probably issues, once again, only and specifically due to Donald Trump, who is not about to be the president over the course of Nancy Pelosi's upcoming speakership. If Nancy Pelosi literally won't bring Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic, and in the one situation, once again, we cannot reiterate this enough. In the one situation where progressives have more power, 3 votes could have determined the outcome of our entire future regarding healthcare and a plethora of other policies, as if, like you pointed out. If Nancy Pelosi won't do that, well, then what do we need her for? How could she possibly be better? I mean, think about it like this. Did she not just take to a floor vote a 5,000 page piece of legislation that wasn't introduced until 2 hours before, that literally no one could read? And the parts of it that people could finally get some cliff notes on were things like voting to put money into establishing another coup in Venezuela. And both the Democrats and Republicans push for that. Obviously, they voted for it once again without reading it, which is very problematic in and of itself. And then for Nancy Pelosi to allow that without pushback is problematic. When we're talking about just the idea of stimulus checks, Trump tested her, literally said, "Give me the checks right now. Nothing else in the bill. I'll sign it." You could take it for his word to take it or call him a liar, but why immediately then wouldn't the squad or some progressive say, "All right, we'll take your bet. Nancy Pelosi, send it. We got it right here. Send it up." Because Nancy Pelosi isn't going to sign it. Because Nancy Pelosi has the entire squad neutered. And this was the one opportunity that they actually had her over the desk and like, okay, this is what's going to happen if you want to maintain your power. And they didn't take that opportunity. So now the reverberating impact of them kowtowing in the middle of a pandemic, if you cannot get healthcare in the middle of a pandemic, if you feel like your mandate is that insignificant, despite all these followers and all these talent agents and all this money that y'all making, y'all had no problem giving yourself a raise a couple of weeks ago. Like, if you can't use your mandate to give healthcare in the middle of a pandemic, not only does Nancy Pelosi need to go, but you need to go too, because you're not an effective legislator. And that is more in how the parties are alike, especially amongst leadership, than it is an indictment of whether or not Medicare for All is popular. 90% of all Democrats support it. Almost every independent-minded person support it. And Fox News did a poll, 70% of their viewers support it. One of the things that Trump ran on was universal health care, because he knew that even amongst the populist right, this is a populist idea. He even threatened the Republicans when he was beefing with the ACA a couple of years ago. He threatened them, said, "You know what? If y'all don't figure something out, I'm just going to give them Medicare for All. I'm just going to give them universal health care." So with that, great movements are inspired by pressure. It isn't about getting the right people in at the right time. No. Lyndon B. Johnson was a bleeding heart racist. He was basically bullied into the civil rights amendments. He was known as a connoisseur of the N-word. He was bullied into the civil rights amendment. The Dixiecrats had to vote for the civil rights amendment. The liberal Republicans and the conservative Republicans back then why? Because the country had gotten so pissed, so angry, and started saying, "You know what? We got something for y'all if y'all don't handle business in time." They responded with giving the people, for the most part, what they wanted. It wasn't playing nice. It wasn't this idea that the messenger was bad and no, because the Black Panthers had their message. Malcolm X and his crew had his message. Martin Luther King had his message. So some of the white allies had their message of unity. Like, it took a bunch of different messages from a bunch of different messengers who all maybe didn't like the other one, and that's all cool, whatever. But we do know one thing: the segregation thing can't last. We have to have equitable opportunity. We got to build a mandate around that, and we pushed it forward and got something done that nobody at the time wanted. That's what we have to do with Medicare for All and all progressive policies going forward. And what they demonstrated is that they will not do that when you are refusing to do this in the middle of a pandemic for healthcare.
Okay, so now I do believe you mentioned the Cash Act with the $2,000 stimulus. I do believe that passed the House a couple days after Trump said he was interested in vetoing the other package.
No. I'm talking about months ago.
Okay, you're talking about before the election?
Yes, before the
okay.
All right. A month and a half before, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to make sure I had that right then. All right. Yeah, so I agree. We do need to pressure the government. That is not AOC's job. However, her job as a politician is to respond to pressure. I think all politicians' jobs are to respond to pressure. Now, if we were to organize, let's say over the next 6 months, let's start here, organize over the next 6 months a multi-million-dollar Medicare for All march on Washington, right? Similar, again, to like the civil rights marches. I do think that would be a lot more of a productive time spent than trying to pressure AOC on Twitter to force a specific parliamentary procedure. I think that we should be organizing outside of these political media spaces. We should be, one sec, my phone is on. All right, we should be, I don't know how to, I'm so sorry. I'm being interrupted.
We gotta have more technical issues.
Unbelievable. See, now this is unbelievable. Okay, so I do think that if we were to organize that, right? If we were to say, let's, we have disagreements, you and me, Niko. Let's organize a huge march, get as many people as we can, and let's, demand that the politicians do what we say. I think that would be a lot more of an effective time being spent rather than petitioning specific members of Congress. Now, you said Jimmy went after Mark Pocan. I know he went after a couple of the progressive people until, like, you know, something stuck, essentially, is my reading of that. I think that that's good. You should go after as many of the politicians as you can, but I also think you should call your own legislators. And I don't know what Jimmy's legislator is. I don't know what your legislator is, but I got a Republican, so I call him every once in a while. We have a good conversation, but we should be calling our own legislators. We should be pressuring our local politicians at the state level, at the municipal level. We should be building community organizations, because really the biggest power when it comes to political pressure is unions and organizing. That's one of the reasons why we got civil rights as well, is because there were organizations of people that were willing to do things that they agreed on, and the politicians could not, they didn't know what they were willing to do, and therefore that gives them more bargaining power compared to a very atomized group of people that may agree on policy but are completely separated on strategy.
I just want to say real quick, I'll give both of you one more chance to respond to each other on this topic, and then we're going to move on to the next one.
Okay, sounds good. So, I agree actually 100% with everything you just said. And I don't know how long you've been involved in the whole Bernie movement, but like I said, I've been involved in it since 2015 and started an organization from this wasn't like post 2016 Bernie where everybody already loved him. This was, who the hell is Bernie Sanders? He has like a 2% chance of winning and there's a 4% margin of error. And I built the largest organization in the country. I 100% agree with you. And that's actually what we did. We did that, actually. Jackson Hinkle from Arizona organized a march and a protest, not one, but gave people the opportunity to go multiple days, actually, every morning for 3 or 4 days to do this. We got about 50 to 60 people a day, but that is absolutely unacceptable. The reason why we didn't get 50, the only reason we got 50 or 60 people per day, it isn't because people don't believe in Medicare for all. It isn't because people don't want this. It's because, people were too busy bitching about Jimmy. They were too busy bitching about Jimmy Dore rather than saying, hey, we don't like Jimmy Dore, but this guy, Jackson Hinkle, he's the one organizing it in DC. So you don't even have to see Jimmy Dore because he's a compromise, he has compromised immunity. So he wasn't going to be out there, but we didn't get any of that. And the problem is people like yourself, I don't know if you're doing it on purpose, but I don't know if you're doing it or for purpose, but when you focus so much on the person introducing the solutions, rather than focusing on the person who is people who are refusing, telling you, oh, kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. It's fine. We got to protect AOC. We have to protect her at all costs. And we're not talking about the issue anymore. It becomes personality versus personality. Instead of the moment that someone makes it about a personality, right? Just saying, you know what? Hey, look, I might not like the guy either, but hey, we really have an opportunity here. Once again, cannot reiterate enough. They had the power of the entire next 2 years in their hands with 3 votes. AOC, Barbara Lee, and Cori Bush could have restructured the rest of the next 2 years. They chose not to do that. We organized. We pressured from the outside. We did our job. Jimmy has a massive platform. We say we wish that politicians are not our friends. This idea that AOC is everybody's friend is fucking ludicrous. It's insane. They're not our friends. They're part of the 1% that we're supposed to be challenging. And there are politicians who've said that, even Ro Khanna. I don't like Ro Khanna, but Ro Khanna said on Jimmy Dore's show, he was like, we're like the top 0.02% of the most powerful people in the world. If you're scared of a little interview and a little pushback and criticism, you shouldn't be doing this job. And that's how I feel about AOC. AOC or whoever, if they don't like the criticism and the strategy is sound. The strategy was 100% sound, actually. It's the most sound strategy that Jimmy could have possibly ever come up with, or anybody for that matter. The issue is when it came time to choose defend Medicare for all, and as a matter of fact, to fight for Medicare for all or attack Jimmy Dore and defend AOC, people chose that they thought it was more important to defend AOC than to fight for Medicare for all and ask her to fight for Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. They chose to focus on defending AOC than to say, you know what, hold on real quick, AOC, we got some organizing to do. There's a protest going to be out there because I spoke at this event. And when you want to talk about an event that was smeared that had 3 Black people and almost all women speaking, it was Latinos, Black people, and 2 white guys, period. And this event was smeared beyond belief. And I don't think this is a coincidence, because we see this problem in the progressive movement happening over and over again. When Black people or Latino people, whoever don't fall in line and toe the line of the establishment, we don't see the same support as if a white person were to organize the same event from the neo-progressive establishment who was deemed acceptable by neo-progressives. These things are all interconnected. And we had a chance to organize. Like, I agree with you on everything you just said, but we had a chance to organize. Some of us did. We weren't on Twitter. That's my point. It's like, I get it. The social media organizer can't win unless you actually organize. We did that. But unfortunately, there were too many people. And you might have been one of them. I don't know. I don't follow your Twitter, but you might have been one of them. It sounds like you probably were. There were too many people still talking about why y'all talking on Twitter? Why y'all talking on Twitter? We weren't talking on Twitter. We were there. My pictures are up. And unfortunately, we didn't see enough people worried about being there. They were too busy trying to tear that movement down, which is unfortunate. We missed an opportunity.
Okay. So I just want to say that I completely disagree with your characterization of what power lies or lied in AOC, Barbara Lee, and Cori Bush. I do not think if it were the case that withholding your votes for speakership could get you whatever you wanted, I feel like this country would be a lot different right now. Now, do I think that the PAYGO concessions are good enough? No, I don't. But do I think that they're not nothing? Absolutely. And so another thing is there's a false dichotomy that you're setting up here, where you think, at least in what you said, you're saying that you either have to defend AOC or like go after her, right? There's no.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. That's mischaracterization. I said
okay.
I said people could choose to fight for universal health care and organize or defend AOC. That doesn't necessarily.
I think that that's a false dichotomy. You can fight for healthcare and not defend AOC. You can defend AOC and fight for healthcare. I don't think that those things are necessarily need to be pitted up against each other. And also, as far as if you're referring to the Force the Vote march or whatever it was, that was like 2 weeks ago, to be honest with you, the march seemed like it was mostly organized in the sense of like how I would see a bunch of podcasters organize a live show. It didn't seem like y'all got any unions on board. Didn't seem like y'all got at least, any unions that were to show up.
We had like the DSA representative, like the national director, like he was there.
Right.
Like it's so.
Well,
like,
was the whole DSA there?
No, the whole DSA wasn't there because their leadership failed them, and now they're restructuring their leadership because of that.
Okay.
That.
Well, that's the fault of the organizer, in my estimation. You can't really fault random people on Twitter in their discourse for the fact that you could only get 50 people to show up for a Medicare for All march. I think the statistic is only like 18% of Americans use Twitter, something like that. If you were to spend several months, not just a couple weeks before the vote would be forced, if you were to say have spent since the election up until now doing this, you might have gotten better results. And this is one of my problems with this whole thing, is like, it's presented as if this is a perfect solution. It's presented as if AOC, Cori Bush, and Barbara Lee can get whatever they want, which I disagree with. And then even if they do get the vote forced, I disagree with the ability for them to pass it. Yes, are our politicians evil? They won't give us healthcare in a pandemic? They're garbage. 99% of them are garbage. Absolute gutter trash, right? Nancy Pelosi is relatively useless, right? And we can agree on that. Now, I would also say that there is, again, a degree of separation between Democrats and Republicans, right? I am a queer person, and I know just on social issues, Republicans are a lot worse than Democrats. So if you were to give me an option between a Republican and a Democrat, and they were the same on everything except social issues, I'd vote for the Democrat just because of that. Now, another thing is that we need to, one of the force the vote things was we need to find a list of people that we primary. We already have that list. We know who agrees with Medicare for All, who equivocates, etc. We can go after these people. We can primary them already. That's already an accomplishment that we can do. Now, just real quick, when you say we can force the vote for Medicare for All, are you implying that Medicare for All would pass or that it would fail?
Honestly, I don't know. But to be clear, I believe that it actually would have a huge chance of passing, which is why Nancy Pelosi has gone out of her way to make sure it never got introduced, because of the caucus that Jayapal set up, because of the 93 people within the Progressive Caucus, because some Republicans have constituencies that absolutely do support universal health care, because of the fact we're in a pandemic and that would be a PR nightmare to vote against it. That is exactly what would happen, is that there's a huge potential for it to pass. And the pharmaceutical donors and the insurance industry donors don't want that to happen. And so either way, if it didn't pass, now we have on record the people who were kowtowing. I know you said that there's this idea that, oh, we know who supports, we know who's waffling. No, y'all don't. People thought that Elizabeth Warren actually supported Medicare for all for like a year and a half. Like y'all still think
me personally, I didn't think that. I thought she was.
I'm glad you did.
But the whole time.
But I'm saying like you might be intelligent enough to figure that out all on your own. Most people have not. They don't know what to believe because Kamala co-sponsored Bernie's legislation in the Senate, and guess what? She backed off. A lot of people did. So like we don't.
Yeah, including a lot of other people that ran for president.
Right.
Well, let's wrap this topic up because we could keep going on this, but let's move on to the next one. The next topic that y'all wanted to get into was, do you agree or disagree with Trump's ban from social media? Niko, I'm going to let you lead us this time.
100% disagree. That is social. We just saw fascism in real time, and authoritarians don't knock on the door before you realize they're authoritarian. Fascists don't knock on the door before they realize you're a fascist. If you don't know what the definition of fascism is, it is an element of corporations mixed with usually some racism, with the federal government, with authoritarianism, with the ability to enforce that with either a police force or a military force. What we saw, okay, was Trump say, not the first ban. I'm talking about the second ban exclusively right now. If we can get into the first ban. I'm talking about the second one. Because he said, I'm not going to go to the inauguration. They banned him for life. Mind you, Joe Biden himself actually said it's a good idea that Donald Trump isn't coming to the inauguration. Twitter interpreted this, God knows how, as, oh, he's actually inciting violence. We have to completely and totally remove him. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if he wasn't the sitting president of the United States of America still for at least another week or so. Okay. And on top of that, you have just unilaterally decided as a corporation, at the behest, by the way, of a lot of people in the government who were telling them to ban Trump. So government told big tech to do something, and they have the authority to enforce it, and then they did it. And then they decided unilaterally to affect the discourse of the entire world. Not just the United States. We forget this is the president of the United States, but the president of the United States affects the discourse and the policies of the entire world. That is not ever okay. If you know your history, this isn't done to Trump so we can get out white supremacists and like it's cute that people actually think the government cares about like white supremacy and racism all of a sudden. I got some news for everybody here in case you didn't know. Like the Democrats, it's like a lot of these people that are calling for impeachment or for white supremacy and, oh, this is a coup, white supremacy is cool. Yeah, those same Democrats just forced y'all to vote, lied and connived, and even in some cases probably did cheat for a damn racist, segregationist, sex pest, author of the Patriot Act, author of the crime bill that we use to target us. Like, they don't care. The fact that y'all think that that's the reason that they're doing this is hilarious. They're doing this because it's the low-hanging fruit. Just like when they went after Alex Jones to deplatform him, we warn people they're going to come after the left next because these are who these policies are really for. They're not worried about Alex Jones. Alex Jones is not real opposition. But the real opposition, we can't come with a good excuse to stop them from doing what we want, from banning them from these platforms. But what we can do, we can put out Alex Jones as a little feeler, get those policies in place, and then use them on the left whenever we want to. We saw this done against Black Panthers with Herbert Hoover. We saw this done against Fred Hampton. We saw this done against Martin Luther King, who was spied on by Herbert Hoover and Eisenhower. We saw how this turns out already. And they use some specter, whether it be Russia, whether it be the neo-McCarthyist version of Russia, like they were using to ban people before, whether it be Donald Trump. It's always some little boogeyman, and then one person making a unilateral decision based off of some bullshit lie, and then they come for us. And that is who this is really about. The left, who they intend on silencing and then using. They like right now, Congress is working on a piece of legislation to make all MAGA rallies basically acts of domestic terrorism. Now, this means if you are going to advocate for Medicare for all, like we both agree you should, and you organize in DC, you have two people in that MAGA crowd are in that Medicare for all crowd, because a lot of MAGA people who support Medicare for all, they have their hats on. Guess what? You just organized a domestic terrorism rally. Did you think that might disincentivize people from fighting for these policies? I think so. But even more so, it'll ramp up the argument, the domestic terrorism issue that we are seeing unfold right in front of our eyes that no one wants to talk about.
Andrea, your opening statement on was banning Trump good or bad?
I don't think. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that the good versus bad is a little bit of a I think that is a little bit of a push-pull kind of a thing. I think it's maybe okay to limit his usage of Twitter, especially if he's not going to tell his supporters to stop trying to overthrow state capitals and the capital of the United States. I do think it's a good idea to maybe just turn him off for maybe a week or so. I think that's a good idea. Now, at the end of the day, also, whether or not I think it's a good idea, it's important to know that it doesn't matter if I think it's a good idea. It doesn't matter if Niko thinks it's a good idea. It doesn't matter if anyone on Twitter at all thinks it's a good idea, because they did it. They had the power to do it anyway. They've always had the power to do it. And they've never really strayed away from their power to do these things, especially when it comes to the left. I have been banned on many social media websites many times. As a trans person, I have gotten into, arguments with people that like to pretend that, I just don't exist, or would like to kill me or legislate me out of existence. And I say, well, fuck you, bitch. And that's, my response to them on Twitter. And then I get perma-banned, right? So that's a situation I've been in several times. A lot of people I know have been in that situation. As far as I'm concerned, censorship of the left has been done. It will continue to be done, and it will continue to be done regardless of what happens. Now, at the end of the day, I think it's hilarious that Trump got banned. I think his meltdowns, him trying to log on to other accounts, I think it's great comedy. And at the end of the day, again, it doesn't matter what I think about it. I'm just going to comment on that because I think it's really funny. Another thing is big tech is bad. We need to break these companies up. There's two strains of thought, I think: nationalizing tech companies and social media companies, or breaking them up. Personally, I lean toward breaking them up, but I can understand arguments for nationalization. Personally, I think decentralization leads to less corruption, less power overall than nationalization. So I'd rather break them up. Instead of having Twitter and Twitter be the public square or whatever, I'd rather have Twitter, Parler, Gab, Mastodon, and all these other websites make up 30 more. I'd rather just have it be as decentralized as possible, have as many different platforms. Do you really need to post pictures on your Twitter account, or have all those capabilities directly? I don't really think so. I think there's a lot of problems with big tech in general. Another thing is, I disagree with your assertion that a corporation exercising they're a private corporation exercising their First Amendment rights is fascism. I disagree that there is coercion between the government and big tech in order to create this weird fascistic regime that you're like a V for Vendetta scenario that you're trying to outline here. Fascism is a very specific thing that does not apply to big tech. It does not apply to corporations. It really applies toward a structure of power. And again, these corporations have always had the ability to do this. So if this is a fascist move, does it mean that they've always been fascist? Or is it only fascist when they ban the president? When does it become fascism is my question on that one. And I'd like to end with that.
Okay, so I guess I can start from there. Actually, they've always been fascist. In fact, people like myself have been talking about this for quite some time. I've been talking about Section 230 for a long time, because you're absolutely right. They've had this power. Now, I know you wanted to push back on this idea that there's no V for Vendetta scenario. No. There is. There is. The Google was seeded by In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's venture capitalism firm. This isn't like a conspiracy theory. They're registered in Arlington, Virginia. They're pretty open about how they do their business. Amazon is effectively owned by the government. They gave him the $600 million to buy the Washington Post. Ro Khanna is the representative from Silicon Valley, and he literally tweets out, "Hey, Amazon in Silicon Valley, take off a Parler from your server." They did it because he's a representative, and he can control and dictate to a certain degree the subsidies they get, the deals they get, how they can move in Washington, their lobbying, et cetera, et cetera. That is, and so basically he uses authority as a congressman to tell a corporation what to do. So whether you want to talk about the venture capitalism side or the literal congressman telling a corporation and using that authority to take someone off, which, by the way, Jack cheered for, because Parler also just happened to be his biggest competition, was trending #1 in the App Store at the time. So yeah, that's fascism. And I'd reject this idea. Well, it doesn't matter what we say. It absolutely matters what we say. You just were talking about how important it is to organize and build up momentum so that we can finally get what we want. That starts with awareness. And so, yeah, it might be funny. Like, yeah, something that you can discuss amongst your friends and it's funny. But pushing this idea that it's so funny that we need to ignore the real life implications, like we don't have a history of what censorship looks like, and what that could lead to. Like that's ludicrous. Like it doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you want to focus on that, considering you just said yourself, and I agree with you, which is why I don't like this. If they can ban a president of the United States, they can damn sure ban you. What if you do build up a wonderful channel with a bunch of subscribers, and this becomes your business, and you are able to put other people in your employment because of that, and build co-ops, and then they can crush you immediately? Because that's what we saw happen to the People's City Hall in LA, who used to protest for fair housing and rent structures and things like that. That's what we saw with the People's Party Facebook page. This is after Trump's ban. They immediately used that ban to ban leftist pages, not just leftist pages, but direct action leftist pages. This is why I'm fighting for you to not have to be banned again. Free speech is an absolute right. It isn't a sometimes kind of right. It's an absolute right. He didn't incite violence. But even if he had done that, right? Let's just say he did. You know who Juan Guaido is, I'm sure. Juan Guaido held up his phone, live streamed, and called for all the people of Venezuela to go to the governor's mansion, which is where Maduro stays, and commit a coup. Juan Guaido, AOC follows his Twitter account. He still has a Twitter account up, okay? Trump, after assassinating, or at least backing the assassination of another leader, extrajudicially in another country, breaking international laws, breaking our own laws, okay? He then began saber rattling at Iran at the same time and almost sparked off a world war. Did he get banned? No. Okay, all the Democrats who are backing the coup in Bolivia, or backing the coup in Venezuela, or backing the coup in with Assad, talking about we need a bomb and we need to did they get banned? No, there is no consistency here. That is the issue. I would agree with you to a certain degree if there was some consistency, but the fact that there is no consistency shows me that this is not funny at all. Because whenever the government is okay with the incitement of violence, big tech seems to be okay with that, doesn't it? Okay, but whenever the government or whoever the dominant party is, or whoever is dominating the culture at the time isn't okay with it, then all of a sudden big tech feels like it has to make a move several days before the new president takes over and takes out effectively, supposedly, the most powerful person in the world. Now, if that was, like I said, that was a consistency across the board where they did this every time a government official incited violence, then it's a different thing. Now, I also like to remind people that there was a court case that said that Trump can't even ban people on social media because he's a public figure and his accounts of public interest. So how then does that case not be applied in the reverse? Because he is who he is. We need to know what he is doing, because I would rather, if everybody in the world thinks he's a neo-fascist, you want fascists hanging out in the dark where you can't see what they're doing, or out in the light where you can defend yourself against them? I would prefer the latter.
Andrea, your response.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to say that given everything that's happened in the last 7 days or so, I do think Trump getting banned on Twitter is one of the least of our concerns. I think the movement that Donald Trump is building is a hell of a lot more concerning than big tech banning him on Twitter. I completely disagree with your assertion that he did not incite violence. I think he, along with several representatives, his son, and Rudy Giuliani, definitely did incite violence. Rudy Giuliani said we need trial by combat.
With Trump specifically, I mean.
Well, Trump organized the whole event. He told all of his supporters that you're going to go to January, you're going to come see me on January 6th. Mm-hmm. And he kept telling everyone the big lie that the election was stolen, which it was not. The election was not stolen.
Before they walked to the Capitol, I just have to say this as a matter of fact, and you can watch the speech yourself if you'd like, he said be peaceful twice. And then he told people to leave when it began to even look like it was going to get violent.
To be honest, that doesn't mean anything.
I mean, it kind of does.
If someone can say be peaceful, and then that automatically just nullifies everything they've ever said, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean anything.
Well, we're not talking about anything he's ever said. We're talking about just a specific issue of inciting violence. You can't say he incited violence when he, in fact, with his words, said the opposite. That's what
I can say that, and I just did, and I'm going to continue to do so.
You're conceding the argument. Then it's all
I'm definitely not conceding the argument. So if someone is building an event, we're going to rally in front of the Capitol building on January 6th. The big lie is that Donald Trump had the election stolen from him, and that Mike Pence single-handedly can overturn the election results. Now, again, what did he say as soon as the speech was over on Twitter? He said, if only Mike would have done the right thing, confirming that everyone in the audience, in his audience, they're his fans, and I don't want to say voters or constituents, they're fans. They're really nothing more. I can hear an echo, by the way. Did you I don't know. But either way, it's a little disconcerting. But anyway, if you're going to build an event at January 6th, if you're going to tell people Mike Pence can overturn the election, right? Which is not true. He cannot do that.
Actually, he could. Legally,
okay.
he could. I'm just saying, just like as a matter of like, they have constitutional authority over the Electoral College. So I said that.
Okay. I personally think that's a misinterpretation. Now, Mike Pence himself was not going to do that. And whether or not he could do that versus, he was not going to do that. Mike Pence clearly did not do that. And that's what caused the situation. Again, but he built this whole event. He built a big lie about the election being stolen, about there being voter fraud. He lost 60 plus court cases over it. He was caught trying to pressure the Secretary of State of Georgia to overturn the election results. He said, quote, find 11,780 votes. That's a little weird, right? Why would you be pressuring someone to just find votes? So he convinced all of his audience and his fans that the election was stolen. He said, we're going to go to January 6th in front of the Capitol. He said, Mike Pence can overturn the election. And then Rudy Giuliani said, we need trial by combat. Himself, he riled up the crowd by saying, we're going to go show him who's boss, that kind of stuff, that kind of rhetoric. Again, a lot of the contingents of people here, again, I come from an anti-fascist background. They're Proud Boys, the Patriot Front. There's a lot of these groups like Boogaloo that are heavily militarized, and they utilize social media to organize each other. So it was known ahead of time that all of these far-right extremist groups were here. That was known. You're telling me the president just didn't know that there are far-right white supremacists in his crowd that would say, oh, all of a sudden when Donald Trump says be peaceful, after everything that's happened, all of a sudden those far-right white supremacists are going to say, well, the president said to be peaceful. Or are the white supremacists going to say, oh, the president of the United States has to say that? He's covering himself. I understand that. I got this, Mr. President. Now, it turns out that a lot of the president's fanboys got that interpretation. That, oh, be peaceful actually means you're the president. You have to say that. That's your role. And we're going to take it from here. They stormed the Capitol. The police let them in. 6 people are dead. I do not think that it is a good idea to downplay those things. And as far real quick on the social media thing, I do agree that there should be consistency. I do agree that they probably should have done something after the incitement of war with Iran. But at the same time, I do think that all of these things do not occur in a vacuum. I do think Donald Trump's instability in almost inciting a war with Iran definitely played in to a factor in part in banning him now. I disagree with your characterization that Trump got banned because he said there would be a peaceful transition. I disagree with the characterization that Trump got banned for one.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said he got banned specifically, and Twitter said it. You can look up the article. They said it, not me. I'm not making this up. He said, I'm not going to go to the inauguration. They took that as him trying to incite his audience. When that wasn't
well, I did read the article, and they said a lot more than that. And they also did say what I'm about to say, in that a lot of his recent contributions to the discourse go into the decision. If he didn't almost incite World War III a year ago, like around today, maybe we would have had a different conversation about it. Maybe they wouldn't have banned him. I do think that these things do not occur in a vacuum, and you have to understand that time moves forward. And so, again, whether or not, is it a problem that they don't enforce these things consistently? Absolutely. But at the same time, if someone's doing repeated patterns of misbehaving, I do think there has to be a point where instead of saying 2.5 or 2 3/4, you get to 3 already. And that's my opinion.
All right. So there's a lot of problems with everything you just said. So let's talk about consistency, because I'm consistently against fascism. And that's a problem on the left that I see. They're not consistent about shit, but especially fascism. Because see, there was actually an attempted coup about 4 years ago, and that was Russiagate. It's been debunked thoroughly. And all it took was 2 random CIA agents, just saying, hey, guys, we're going to lay this anonymous tip here. And, oh, what a coincidence. Hillary Clinton actually spread the lie then got other people that she paid off in various ways, whether it be Andrew McCabe, who got fired because of his connection to the Clinton, where she helped his wife benefited from the most fundraising in the history of the country, just to run for state house. Okay, that was Andrew McCabe's wife, who was fired for working with the Clintons on this particular case. Got thrown out. Okay, but it was nothing, absolutely nothing short of an attempt to overturn the election, where she spread the actual lie that Trump stole it. If everybody just kind of forgot, I know it's kind of crazy. And then we spent the next 3.5 to 4 years talking about it. People's lives were actually ruined over it. And guess what? Hillary Clinton's Twitter account is still here. And not only is it still here, but not a single person who is all of a sudden all riled up about Trump and his white supremacists were nowhere to be found when it came to the bigotry that the Democratic Party, the neoliberal establishment, and Hillary Clinton were espousing at anyone and anything Russia. Like that, I don't want to hear about time moves forward when y'all won't even hold the people accountable that you should have been holding accountable back then, and you won't keep the same energy when it's time to hold actual fascists accountable. Once again, I feel like the difference here is that between you and I, at least, is that you see Trump as some unique evil. I see Trump as a unique symptom of what
that is a mischaracterization. I think Trump is the worst president, but only because each president is worse than the previous.
Yeah, that's fine. You can think he's the worst president, but it's not true. You're literally, we're about to have the person who was the architect of the Patriot Act, one of the architects of the Iraq War, the 94 crime bill. Like,
well, it's very possible Biden will be a worse president.
I was only 3.5, about 4 years old when he wrote it, and my life is still affected by because I was partially raised in the South by the 94 crime bill. Those private prisons are still there. All the problems that Trump has used, the kids in the cages, he got that from Biden and Obama. The militarization of the police, that was Biden and Obama. Like the wars that are still going on, that is Biden and Obama. So he can't be the worst president in history if his biggest problems were caused by the guy who was actually about to occupy office. Once again, literal segregationists argued in the court of law and on the Senate floor, literally said, I don't want my kids to be raised in a racial jungle. Whenever they were trying to desegregate by busing in people in his district, or in his state.
Right. I mean, real quick, I agree.
We're going to wrap this topic up in a second. We're going to get to audience questions, and I want to say that so that the audience knows. Start sending those questions in. I'm looking for them.
Yeah, and I just want to say this the last part. This whole idea that it was a big lie, like that he stole the election. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know. I have zero idea, and neither do you. And as a matter of fact, that's the problem. None of this would have ever happened if we would actually once again been focused on election integrity, which we have none. We have zero. You have no idea whether it was actually stolen. That's the same reason that Hillary Clinton was able to pitch the lie that Trump stole it. But in actuality, I don't know if he actually did steal it. Maybe he did, but I do know that Russia didn't steal it. But we would not be able to have these back and forths like this if we actually had transparent elections. You and I have both agreed this entire time this entire political system is corrupt. This isn't like a federal DA, or excuse me, a district judge who gets elected. Federal judges are appointed in a non-democratic process by whoever has the domination of the country at the time, which means that our entire election system, our judicial system, at their core, they're not reliable, because the person who's about to take power will decide whether or not those federal judges actually stay in power or not. This is reality. We can't pretend that the system needs to be dismantled and then defend the system that needs to be dismantling when it's convenient for our arguments. We need to be focusing on the core of these issues and trying to scapegoat and say, oh man, he incited violence. Like it's just simply not true. And if that's the case, then we have a really weird standard of what we consider violence, considering people have said absolutely worse from the other side of the fence, and it's never been dealt with.
Okay. So real quick, I want to ask you a question before I start. Do you consider yourself an anti-fascist?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself like a modern day one. I would consider myself like the 30s and the 40s.
I'll take that as a maybe. Now I think
it's a maybe. It's exactly what I said. It's not a maybe.
I
actually believe in organizing 100% of the time. Like, I'm not going to show up to Trump's inauguration like he's a fascist, and nor the fact like what we're about to see with Joe Biden, who is also a fascist, but we will not see a single Antifa member there. That's what I mean. I mean,
I don't think that there is such a thing as an Antifa member. I also disagree that Joe Biden is a fascist, but I'd like to stay on point here, because I was speaking specifically about big tech, and you just kind of threw a bunch of topics at me, and didn't really address the big tech thing. So I'm just gonna, I wrote down a few things. Russiagate, who cares? I don't think that it's comparable. Hillary Clinton, like, she conceded the next day. Remember, it was really funny. She was like, got drunk off her ass and cried the night of the election. I remember that. That was great entertainment. But then she conceded. She didn't go on TV every single day and go on Twitter every single day and do rallies across the country every single day talking about how the election was stolen.
The Women's March was literally that. What do you mean? That's literally what it was.
My assertion was that my assertion would be that the Women's March was mostly about women's rights.
No, it wasn't.
Now, there could have been contingents of people that were there to try to overturn the election, maybe. But at the same time, I don't think.
Like, I was at the New York one. The speakers themselves were saying that Trump stole the election from Hillary. Like, yes, she may have never, like, she conceded, but then she spent every other week saying it was stolen.
All right. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, she didn't wield an army of militants. I mean, again, Donald Trump said, "Proud Boys, stand back and stand by" at the first debate, right? He can walk it back later, and that's fine. He's the president. His followers know he's the president. When he retweets things that say white power and then deletes them later, his followers know he's the president. He has to do certain things because he's the president. It's called a dog whistle kind of a thing. So again, the idea that Russiagate is comparable to this election integrity thing, no. The idea that you're going to say that you're a classical anti-fascist, which sounds a lot like a Dave Rubin style, like, kind of deflection, I think that's a little bit weird. I think whether or not it's modern, whether or not it's retro, I think being anti-fascist means you're against fascism. And I do think that Biden is not a fascist. I do think it's possible Biden could become a fascist or govern like a fascist, but I do not think he personally has the narcissistic egomania required to do that. And maybe we can talk about that in a second here. Another thing is, a lot of your argumentation toward me at the beginning and at this point is you speak in a way that you presume that I have neoliberal ideologies. You speak to me, you use a lot of theys and y'alls and throw me in with people that I disagree with. So I just want to point that out. So again, I do think conceding the next day versus not conceding and going out there every single day and speaking to militants, telling them a date, telling them a time, and then, like, whether or not he said just, JK at the very end, if you shoot someone and then, like, they don't notice you and then you say, whoops, I was just joking about that. It doesn't change the fact that you shot them. So I think if you spend several months leading up to January 6th, doesn't matter if you say stay peaceful at the end.
Okay.
So I think that the idea that you're going to, I want to look at the actual things here. So real quick, you're saying that you're caring about election integrity. I mean, come on, man. That's just like, come on. Like, if you want to say you want to, like, if you want to say we don't live in a democracy because, we don't live in a popular vote system or like, and all those other things, and agreed with the judges and the appointments, it's all corrupt. I agree. But if you want to say that the election, this specific election, was stolen, or if you want to say that it could be stolen,
I'll say you don't know.
That's
what I said.
I think there's a way to say you don't know without saying you don't know and be 50-50. For example, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist, but I also think that it's possible there could be a God. Therefore, I'm also agnostic. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to say, there could be a God, there couldn't be a God. If someone asks me, I'm going to say, I don't believe in God, right? That's my leaning toward, right? In the same way, like, that's what I'm saying. What's your response?
There's a lot of false equivalencies there. First of all, no. It's not even close. I said, you don't know. It's not a 50-50 thing. It's you do not know whether or not he stole the election because you do not have access to the proprietary software, which is private. Despite the fact that we fund our elections with our tax dollars, the proprietary software is private. You can't get to it. You can't request an audit. It is not open source. That is what I mean by literally.
That does not mean that marker.
There is a history. There is a history of problems with election software. I would figure you would know this. I feel like this is like common sense stuff. Like, there are lawsuits all the time over the illegitimacy of election software. Right here in South Florida, Tim Canova had 10,000 ballots destroyed. And it was, by the way, he lost by like a 2 or 3% margin. And in that area, 10,000 ballots would have likely determined the outcome of the election. The woman was found guilty in court of law for destroying the ballots because the machine count was not actually reflective of the balance that had been counted, and she knew it. had to pay him. And then eventually the later years, she tried to cheat again and was fired because of that. This is not like, this isn't conspiracy theory. This is like the norm. It's just like, you don't read about it, so you don't know about it, but it happens very often. I'm an election integrity activist. I was a co-founder of the DNA fraud lawsuit. I witnessed us go all the way up to the Supreme Court only for us to hit Clarence Thomas to decide whether or not it's going to be heard, right as Joe Biden. I'm sure you appreciate the undertone of that relationship. Like that happened right as we got to the Supreme Court. So of course it got killed because Joe Biden protected Clarence Thomas. This is the corruption of our system. And also, like this, Dave Rubin answer. No. So first of all, like I need you to understand this too, because I don't think you realize. Like I get the reason you're saying, because you said my coworker Fiorella is taking some Republican money. Like I want to be as nice as possible. You said this in the video. You said this in the video. You said she's taking money. She must be taking money to divide the left. It's bullshit. You don't see a blue
I don't
check.
think I
You
would
said
say.
this.
I may have said that, but I may have also added context before and after to say I don't know this. But it's
they might be paying her through Super Chats or Patreon, and she just doesn't know. Like that's.
I think that's very possible. Yeah.
No, it's not possible because she's on my network. I know.
But you don't know.
No, I do know where her. No. I know where. No,
where that money comes from.
Listen, I'm trying to tell you, I literally know where her money comes from.
So you know individually every single YouTube account.
Listen,
you know them.
That's what I'm saying. You know
where they get paid.
You're not listening. You without substantiation.
Right.
Because you're talking about personal attacks. So I just want to address this because without substantiation, you're claiming that a leftist who doesn't have a blue check, who started from literally scratch, is taking money to divide the left whenever TYT, for example, just took 20
I don't care
million.
about TYT. I don't care. I don't like them. I don't care about them.
Listen, that's not my point. My point is there are people. So if I say something like that, I have to have evidence, which we do have somebody dedicated to that because that's an important issue. You can't let someone is taking money from people without substantiating that claim because it builds a barn fire that you can't put out. TYT we have all the information, all the documentation.
I don't care about TYT.
Hold on. Can I finish my statement, please? That's not the point. TYT is just the example I'm using because I'm saying we have the information to prove exactly where they're getting their money from. My point is, if you're not going to say that about actual people with actual power and actual influence and actual venture capitalism and actual verifiable proof that they are taking that money, don't say that about up and coming progressives just because you don't like what they have to say. Fiorella's not sowing division on the left. She's out here trying to warn you because you just talked about your account getting banned and you're talking about censorship and she's trying to defend you. So why would that mean she's dividing the left by trying to ask you to, hey, pay attention because this isn't about them. This is about us, the left, is what I'm saying. So I just wanted to go ahead and clarify that before we go on to the questions.
So similarly to how you can't know if the election is got 100% integrity, no one can know where the super chat money comes from. Now, I want to say that my argumentation is not that she is being funded by Republicans. My argumentation is that I do think there are a lot. Now, they could be Republicans. They could be Putin. They could be Syria, Iran. They could be anyone. There are a lot of people that give media people like YouTubers money in the effort to have them continue doing certain things. I watched a lot of Jimmy Dore's streams, for example. He got a lot of super chats of people saying, yeah, AOC is this and that and that. I think that does influence him changing the conversation to AOC over a period of time. I do think, again, me personally, I've gotten a couple of super chats for talking about Jimmy Dore in a negative light. I know that. I say, all right, if I get $50 for saying this, maybe I'm more likely to say it. I'm understanding of that. Now, am I saying that Republicans are funding you or your friend or whatever? Not necessarily. I'm saying it's possible. And I also am saying that the net effect here of downplaying what happened at the Capitol, downplaying the incitement of violence from the president. What?
But she didn't downplay it. I don't know where this idea.
Well, you did, and you tied yourself to her.
No.
You said, you said the president didn't incite violence, which is downplaying.
Okay, that's not downplaying the events. Is that downplaying the events or making a statement that the president literally, by definition, any legal definition,
might not agree with you because he currently is facing charges for the event.
Conflating thing where you keep conflating, and that's not what I said. No, I didn't do it to you. I didn't do that to you. So don't do that to me. I quoted you as best I can verbatim. I didn't extrapolate anything. So can we please keep that consistency?
I would love consistency. So again, I think one of the strategies that you do when you debate people is you say a lot of things like common sense. This isn't a conspiracy theory. While you spew things that I think personally would maybe fall under the auspices of a conspiracy theory. Again, you're saying you don't know if the election is completely valid, but also that you know the personal finances of all of the people that fund you and give super chats and donations and all that stuff to your network. I don't know what money. If someone were a Republican and funding me and saying like, I want you to go after this, I wouldn't know. I have no idea. I'm just saying that it's very possible that, again, I've seen personally Jimmy Dore, and I can attest to that. I've got screenshots of it, of people telling Jimmy Dore, giving him $500 super chats saying hashtag force the vote, fuck AOC. If I got a $500 super chat saying fuck AOC, maybe I'd make another video saying fuck AOC, but that's just me. It's possible that I'm corrupt and everyone else is a saint, maybe, but I do think that money in politics is a huge issue. Big tech, money and influence in government is a huge issue. And I think money involvement in any media personality is a huge issue. I think that if you are going to put yourself on a platform, you should be entirely transparent to the best of your abilities with what your finances are and that kind of stuff. So am I saying that you're funded by Republicans? No. I'm saying that I personally would say that the net effect of Force the Vote and this downplaying what's happening at the Capitol, downplaying the presidential involvement of it, downplaying the links to social media, downplaying all of that in favor of making Trump the victim in this censorship narrative. Now, again, you brought up the People's Council or whatever in LA. That's awful, and I hope their shit that's taken care of. Chances are it won't, because they don't take care of many people's shit. And this is something why we need to organize outside of social media, get people's literal mailing addresses. If, maybe that's not the greatest idea, but PO boxes, set up things like that, phone numbers, way to contact people without social media involvement. I feel like if the main goal was organizing, instead of making Donald Trump the victim in a narrative about censoring Donald Trump, I would say we should try to best protect ourselves against what is coming. We do not have any power right now when it comes to big tech. We don't. If all of humans stopped using them, maybe we'd have a little bit of power. We should try to organize something like that. We should try to get all of the people we agree with on ways that aren't Twitter for communicating, Slack, Discord, right? IRC chat rooms. We should be trying to excise ourselves from big tech as much as we can. And now, again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't watch all of your y'all's content, but I'm not seeing that from this Trump censorship crowd. I'm not seeing the counter strategy or what to do.
Yeah, you would be wrong. I'm not saying that you did it on purpose, but I know there's a lot of content out there. But yeah, you would be wrong. That's all we do. That's how we got our show. Is because we organize.
Okay. Well, I mean, hey, all I know about you is that you did a film about how Antifa are causing problems. This is just from what stuff sent me. I don't really know you. So I know that you are a Tulsi person. And I know that you organized a recent event that got 50 people. So as far as I understand, and now again, I could be wrong, and I'm not trying to be a, personal attacker, but as far as I understand, you don't really have these bona fides to be like a big organizer that.
Okay, so once again, this is bad faith, right? We just did a whole introduction. Okay, so since you want me to break it down, once again, I started the largest Bernie Sanders organization in the country, as a senior in college, while simultaneously running the entire state for Bernie Sanders as also a senior in college. And I was a surrogate for multiple campaigns. And I've organized not only in Florida, but in California and New York. And I started a DNC fraud lawsuit based on with an investigation team that once again just got taken all the way to the Supreme Court. I've been a consultant. I've been a strategist. I've organized more in a 2-week time frame than you've probably organized in ever. So
that's probably true.
This whole idea that you somehow have the answers when I've literally been on the ground, not only finding the answers as an investigative journalist, but then once I find those answers, organizing around them to make sure that we can do things like Force the Vote. If you think it's funny to talk about the fact that when Jackson Hinkle organized this event and then you went out there for Medicare for All, that's an indictment on you. That's an indictment on people like Nomiki, who's in your comment section right now, who said that Jimmy Dore is funded by Steve Bannon with absolutely no proof whatsoever. That's a ludicrous statement. So she's more worried about Jimmy Dore than getting you health care. And this is the problem, because everybody wants to talk about organizing. AOC wants to talk about organizing. You're talking about organizing. Everybody wants to talk about organizing. But when the organizers get to organizing, y'all are nowhere to be found. Y'all are still behind YouTube and behind your camera.
Well, I mean, let
me just say my last thing. And
finish your statement.
Yeah. So just this idea that you can slander and smear anyone based off of some abstract, they could have a super chat. I'm not sure if you know how super chats work generally. It's because they agree with you that they send them. People don't send you super chats for the most part to influence you to do anything. It's because they like what you're saying. So please, just in the future, if you're going to say someone or allege someone is taking money from somebody, like if it's in a joking way, I get it. Okay, whatever. We all haha. But like what you are saying and what you are doing is not helping anyone, and it's in bad faith. And the wrong person that hears that, and you say about the wrong person a little bit more petty than we are, that could end up really putting you in a bad spot as far as lawsuits and things like that in the past, because I've seen it happen. So just letting you know for future reference.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I would just quantify that as quantify that as a threat of litigation. You can sue me if you want. That's fine. I do not ever position myself.
I'm just letting you know for future reference. That's all.
Yeah, sure. I have never said anything slanderous. I'm just saying I do not position myself to be having all the answers. I position myself to be exactly the opposite of that. You're saying you're building your impressive, admittedly, biography there, but you're trying to do that to make yourself seem like you're a more reputable or credible source.
No, you said I don't have. You literally said I don't have the bona fides. I'm telling you, if there's literally no one else on progressive YouTube that has more bona fides. Literally none at all.
If we're talking, you said you're criticizing me for not showing up to the force the vote thing. Where were you in the primary when Bernie Sanders almost won?
No. That was in response. I wasn't going to read my resume, but you literally said as your final statement that I don't have.
I let you speak, so I would rather speak.
But I'm just saying, what I'm saying is don't mischaracterize what I said. Once again,
I think you mischaracterized what I said, and I didn't interrupt you.
No, I quote you. That's the difference. That's all I'm saying. Don't mischaracterize what I said. I responded to you because you questioned my bona fides, and I'm telling you, I have the bona fides. I've been doing it. I've done this more than anybody who complains all day about what they don't.
Running against Bernie Sanders in the primary. I'm happy for you. But again, I didn't interrupt you when you were giving me your blog. I would appreciate if you didn't interrupt me when I'm giving you my blog. So I position.
Don't mischaracterize my statement. That's all I ask. Go ahead.
All right. Well, okay, that's great. So I position myself to say that I do not have the answers. Now, I want to say this right now. Super chats are absolutely influential. If you don't think they aren't, then I'm sorry. You are lying to you. You are lying to me. You're lying to your audience, right? So big tech and governments are all powerful. Money in politics is evil. But somehow you find the idea that a rich politician or a rich leader would spend a couple $100,000 peppering in division in the form of monetary influence in mainstream political talk shows on YouTube. To the idea that is too conspiratorial for you when you are lending credence to the idea that the election may have been stolen.
I said that there's absolutely election fraud, which is a factual statement. And you're saying there could. That's literally a conspiracy theory.
Well, are you saying the election was stolen?
No, I didn't.
Because you went from saying that it might have been.
Don't lie about what I said, because the quotes are right there. We can go back. And I said, you don't know. And I don't know, because election fraud is absolutely real and it's a factual thing. This is once again, this is not a debatable statement. What you're saying is maybe, possibly, somehow, potentially could be, with no facts whatsoever, that it's quite literally a conspiracy theory by the traditional definition. Don't you're doing this thing with these false equivalencies, and they're not equal. I'm sorry, but what that is a conspiracy theory. What I say is a fact. You know, okay.
I 1000% admit that it's a conspiracy theory. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with conspiracy theories. I think a lot of the best ideas start from conspiracy theories. However, a lot of the worst ideas start from conspiracy theories. So you have to tread carefully. I try to position myself, again, I don't act like I know these things. I don't act like I do. And if I come off that way in a snippet that you saw, I apologize, because that is not my intention. I am a little bit of a long form speaker. I don't prep myself. I don't write statements in a way that tries to cover myself at all times. I just kind of talk at the hip. And so if I say something that might have been a little bit rash, chances are I walked it back maybe within 5 or 10 minutes a little bit. So I want to say, if you can give me that little bit of the benefit of the doubt, I would appreciate that. But again, the idea that you're going to say that there is no incitement of violence from the president, but it's somehow unfathomable that someone who's rich would inject a couple $1,000s into super chats to sow division. I just don't get it. I just don't get the angle. And if we want to move on to audience questions, that's fine. Personally, I'm fine just doing whatever.
I mean, well, already run a little past time. I don't know if either of you have to go or if you've got a little more time to
I got
do
10 minutes for
audience.
audience questions.
Let's do 10 minutes of audience questions. If anyone wants to get anything in here in terms of questions, let's go for it. I'm gonna look back and see. It looks like most of the chat is not questions at the moment. So get your questions in. Get your questions.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
Sure
Here we are putting on a brilliant show. We're doing our best. We're entertaining
This
you.
drama, action,
And you're
I'm not even sending us questions.
I'm getting super chats. Yell at Niko. I'm getting super chats. I'm doing it. You're not even gonna give me like come on. This is ridiculous.
Let's see. I don't know. If no one's gonna get any questions in, we could do the final topic, or we can just wrap this up. It's really up to y'all.
I'm down for the final topic. I mean, that's really what the crux of all this
is. The final topic, just to save time, I do think that the Democratic Party is a better vehicle for reformation than a third party or the Republican Party.
I would say we literally have a segregationist sexist who literally got caught raping somebody and fired her, and it was credible. And he's still the president of the United States. After they gaslighted us. The entire election about how diverse the field was this time, because it really wasn't our choice. At the end of the day, I'm not saying you can never organize in the Democratic Party or any party for that matter, but we are post-party politics. The parties are the same for the most part. They both advocate for war. They both do not respect the sanctity of our democracy and our elections. They both cheat. I witnessed Bernie Sanders cheated not once, but twice. Okay, I saw how they manipulated debates. When it's time, once again, we had a progressive wing of the party that had more power in Congress than they could have ever imagined at that point, because I didn't even expect that. I don't think even Jimmy expected that when he made forced vote, because we weren't expecting a bunch of Democrats to abstain. But when that did happen, what did we get? We got excuses. AOC got the same seat she got last time, and nothing really changed. Whenever the woman, by the way, who refused to vote for Pelosi last time, guess what? She got the committee seat she wanted. So when we don't have a true opposition within that party, and then the other party obviously is doing what the hell they want to do, just being ridiculous, but being ridiculous out in the open, whereas the Democratic Party just being ridiculous behind scenes, pretending like they want what I want, and then using me to get what they want, and then throwing me under the bus and people who look like me under the bus. That's absolutely unacceptable. And what it's shown me, especially once again, have no faith in this system whatsoever. We have to organize from outside. That's what all the great movements of the past did. And that's what all the great movements of the future will do if we want to change in this country. And once again, when I say I'm a classical anti-fascist, I need you to understand something. I mean, I'm the anti-fascist that the Black Power fist came from, that elevated Black voices rather than this bullshit Antifa where all these white faces seem to be the face, but the Black voices get suppressed. I represent the Antifa that actually embraced their movement, because it is never wrong. So if you're fighting fascists and you're going to be consistent about it, it is never wrong to do so. You should never hide from that, because every movement requires accountability and responsibility so that it does not get co-opted. And then the Black people within that movement, once again, if they are as talented in a particular area, they get elevated. This whole idea that Antifa isn't an organization, if it's not an organization, then you're not Antifa. And it's not an idea. It's a literal organization. And pretending otherwise.
All right. Well, I'm gonna just for the sake of time, just because you're throwing a lot at me, so I'm gonna try to get through the Gish Gallop here. So you were talking about how Joe Biden was talking about how there's a diversity of the field and how the field was so diverse.
Not Joe Biden, the Democratic Party.
Well, the Democratic Party, the field was diverse. It had a lot of people. At the end of the day, it was a Bernie Biden race. You backed Tulsi. You fell for the distraction. Sorry about that.
What?
I'm sorry. No, let me get to the other parts. Let me get to the other parts. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. I got other parts to get to. All right. So,
go ahead, please.
And Antifa, maybe you can say that there are specific organizations or chapters that are groups that have the core organizational principle of anti-fascism. Sure. Is a specific chapter that is like, whatever Antifa in shitfuck, bumfuck, North Carolina, are they? Yes, that is a group. Now, is anti-fascism as an ideology a group? No, it's not. Anti-fascism as an ideology is just that, an ideology that is against fascism. Now, you can organize under that ideology, similarly to how there's no organization called progressive. Is there besides the car insurance, is there an organization called progressive? No, that is a political ideology that people organize under, and they will create organizations that are called maybe the Progressive Coalition to get healthcare for students, or like you can or have an organizing principle. That doesn't mean that principle is all of a sudden an organization. And also,
no, but I'm saying like there's literally an Antifa organization. This is not like conjecture. This is like you go look it up. It's in history books. They started with Mussolini, came back under Hitler. That's literally what a black power
is yes, I understand that. That is an organization that is right. Understand. That does not mean that Antifa or anti-fascism is an organization. It is not defined as an organization. It is objectively, and this is common sense and not quite a conspiracy theory, it is a political ideology. So that's just factual. So go on.
But so this idea that I dropped the ball, I need you to understand something. I'm glad we have everybody here to watch this. So I dropped the ball. You know the reason that transgender people can actually be in the military? That's because of Tulsi. You know, when they became a protected class, last year under the Equal Rights Act, that's actually Tulsi legislation. Did you know that? Did you know that she had the most progressive climate change legislation in the history of not the country but the world, backed by 400 climate and environmental organizations called the All Fossil Fuels Act? The AOC actually ran on passing, and so did the rest of the squad. Guess what happened? The moment some money and some fame got thrown in their face and AOC got aspiration to be president, she threw that under the bus. Okay, cool. Do you know that she actually dropped out as being vice chairwoman of the Democratic Party to endorse Bernie Sanders, despite the fact that she was actually promised she was going to be the president, and she decided to do the right thing.
Whereas, I appreciate the history lesson.
Hold on, let me finish. Whereas Bernie threw her and Bree and a bunch of other people, Zephyr Teachout and multiple people, under the bus. While Bernie was pitching a Medicare for all that could have led to opt-outs. That's the part that nobody wants to talk about. You can actually leave the network because you didn't know that because he was working on that bill with Gillibrand and Amy Klobuchar because y'all thought that Jayapal's bill was his bill and it's two different bills because it's two different houses.
First of all, I did not think that. So
however, that Tulsi was working on a healthcare plan where no one could opt out for paying into a true single payer system that actually dealt with nurses shortages, that dealt with immigration issues and overpriced colleges and doctor shortages. If we want to talk about who really dropped the ball, the person who introduced the Fairness in Media Act, the one who introduced the bill to end the occupation of Afghanistan twice, Syria twice, the one who actually introduced legislation to demilitarize the police while Bernie was out here voting for the crime bill. If you really want to play the game of who dropped the ball were the people who couldn't see clearly because they were so infatuated and enamored by their white savior, and they'll pick another one next, that they didn't realize that their white savior was calling him my good friend, the rapist segregationist Joe Biden, and propping him up as if he is something different. No. He's as if he is something different than Donald Trump has ever been. Once again, the worst elements of Donald Trump, Joe Biden has embodied for 47 years of his entire career. Whereas his actual friends, the people who actually sacrificed for him, sacrificed for this movement and did the right thing, when he threw them under the bus, that should have been included you. You're the one who fell for the distraction. You're the one who got played. Because if he can throw her under the bus and she sacrificed her entire career for him, then he'll damn sure throw you under the bus. And that's exactly what he did. So if you want to talk about the distraction, we can talk about it. And by the way, Tulsi also introduced the Securing America's Elections Act, which everybody wanted to ignore.
She did.
So if we want to go, we can do this back to back.
I would love to
fall for the distraction. But I'm trying not to get into the personalities. Once again, I want to talk about policy here. But once again, if you ever want to talk about policy with Bernie versus Tulsi, we can have that debate tomorrow. Because it's not going to end pretty. So,
do you want to do that debate tomorrow? Because I'm open.
Absolutely, that debate. That's too easy.
You want to do the same time?
Yeah, I can do that. That's too easy. Yeah, 100%.
Kennedy, maybe we don't need you. I don't want to rope you into some. So yeah, again, I think the idea that you would cite Tulsi Gabbard's statements on trans people or legislation years ago.
No. Last year.
Okay.
Last year election. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, just about a month ago, she released some very blatantly transphobic legislation that kind of undoes all the goodwill that
it's bad. It's bad, but don't say it undoes all the good. Like literally protecting you under the Equal Rights Act as if you were black. You don't undo that with one piece of legislation. It was bad.
Well, personally, and again, I'm going to play the card here, and I'm sure you can play cards. I would not. I as a trans person, she has fallen out of my good graces, and so now you can tell me why I'm wrong. And how the bill isn't that bad, and how the messaging that in the last few weeks of being a congresswoman in the middle of a pandemic when she could be pushing for healthcare, which she wasn't, by the way, but
yes, she was.
Yes,
she was, by the way.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. But in the middle of a pandemic, you're going to introduce legislation written mostly by Kelly Loeffler, by the way, a far right Republican stooge. I think it's a little bizarre. And I do think it's interesting that you initially blocked me over asking you a question about that. Now, I thank you for unblocking me so we can have this discourse. And if you want to have more discourse tomorrow, I'm open to it. But you mentioned that Bernie Sanders was calling Joe Biden's good friend. Well, I'll have you know, again, Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Joe Biden when it was a Bernie Biden race.
Because it was a contracted to do so. And Bernie had dropped out the race. He just lied to y'all. And he admitted it later that he had dropped out weeks earlier, but he pretended like he stayed in so y'all would go out to vote for whoever the hell that judge was in Wisconsin. And he was actually not still running. So
I know that.
And Bernie rejected her endorsement. That's what happened. So I just want to go ahead and clarify that, and we can go back and forth with authority on that. But I was a surrogate, right. So I'm pretty sure I would know.
I'm
go ahead.
happy that you have that classified information. Now again, the primary. I know. I'm just being the. I'm just doing.
I know you're being sarcastic, but I mean, why be sarcastic? I'm just correcting it.
I know. I'm just a sarcastic person in general.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, again, the primary is a disaster. I personally think that backing Tulsi when she polled at like 2% instead of Bernie when he could have possibly won, I think that's a bad move. I would say that that's a blemish on what otherwise is a relatively decent looking biography that you've got there. Again, I would also say that Tulsi is like, she's gone. She's out. Now, if you want to go in her 2024 Republican primary run, go for it. And I wish the best for you.
Do you once again, do you want to throw personal attacks at politicians? Because once again, you're trying to defend the man.
Well, you're defending the politician.
No. Pause. So you're just you're a trans person. Okay, cool.
Yes.
So why, if you care that dearly about the LGBTQ community, and I would imagine that you care about sexual assault victims and rape victims,
sure.
You just witnessed this man crush a woman. Crush Tara Reid with all of his media apparatus.
Agreed. I was one of the most
and you're no. Pause. You're okay with Bernie Sanders calling him a friend while throwing his actual friends under the bus. And you think somehow, pause. You think somehow that calling Tulsi a Republican in a party that just nominated a fucking segregationist rapist is like an insult? Like, think about what you're saying. I get it.
Well,
you think it's a cool gig might work when you're working on video by yourself and nobody can talk back to you, but you sound ridiculous. You sound like you're going to Twitter and quoting talking points. And like I said, if you want to go if you want to go policy for policy, the most progressive between the two, policy for policy, is Tulsi Gabbard. If you really want to have that debate, once again, that's something we can have. But pause. I'll let you finish. Let me finish
right here. We got a paw right there.
Go ahead.
Listen.
Anyway,
y'all have both at this point, like, it's clear there's going to be no agreement on this topic. Y'all have both gotten into a lot of personal attacks. Let's just wrap this segment up, okay? Because this is not going anywhere useful at this point.
Are we allowed to get closing?
I will quickly do some audience questions really fast.
Did you get them?
Just a couple. I got a couple of the best ones here. And so let's do a couple of the best audience questions really fast. This is for both of y'all. I'd like both of you to respond to it, but don't get into it with each other. I just want to hear both of y'all's response. Did you know most states are required to balance budgets? Federal governments are not. People move to low tax states all the time to avoid spending too much money. Medicare for all faces hurdles on this state level. Niko, would you like to take that first?
Yeah, I would. So I actually worked on healthcare policy and worked in healthcare, and I think I would probably be the expert out of these little YouTube stars in this particular issue. And this is actually one of the reasons why Tulsi ended up trying to do the single payer plus bill instead of the Medicare for all bill, because you're right, that is a big issue that no one wants to discuss. Although you cannot have quote unquote duplicative coverage if you were opting into the Medicare for all Medicare system, if you opt out of it, which Bernie's bill allows you to do, then you're kind of strangling the system. However, Tulsi's bill removes that. Everyone pays into that single payer, where you can call it Medicare or whatever system. And so the state's budget is irrelevant, because what that person's referring to, which is a wise thing to be mindful of, is how the ACA has basically been just turned on, into the worst version of what it could have been, because you have the Medicaid aspect of it, and then you have to make sure you fund the Medicaid federally, and then the states either don't ask for the money or they underfund it. And yeah, we don't want a situation like that. We want to make sure that you can't opt out so that you don't strangle the system. And then you want to make sure, of course, that everyone, regardless if you decide you want to do something off to the side with your union or if you're in the military for TRICARE, but we still want to make sure everybody's paying into it so that everybody gets the benefits of it.
Andrea, what's your response to the state hurdles for Medicare for all?
Can you reiterate the question word for word?
Yes. The question was, do you know that most states are required to balance budgets? Federal governments are not. People move from low tax states all the time to avoid spending too much money. Medicare for all faces hurdles on the state level because of this.
Yeah, I do think Medicare for all faces hurdles, and which is why we need a federal system. I do think it's very interesting that, again, on the state level, right, we have a lot of politicians that are a lot more corrupt. A lot of state level and municipal politicians just don't get the same level of like sunlight that a lot of federal politicians do. And I just think, as a general rule, I do think that simping for politicians is a little weird. I think the idea that if someone were to invoke a politician's name, whether they be a state legislator or maybe a federal legislator, and then someone to get into a frenzy and have to list off a bunch of talking points that they learned while working for them, I think that that's a little unhelpful to maybe rearranging the rules and regulations on a federal level and in a state level to acquire a more just system to get healthcare coverage to more people.
What are you referring to? I'm confused.
I am referring to getting healthcare.
Let's not drag this one out.
We can do it tomorrow.
Let's not drag this one out.
I'm just saying. I'm trying to understand what the hell they have to do with healthcare. That's what I'm trying to figure out. But go ahead.
This question is for Andrea. Does the influence of money that supports speech, such as the donation to smaller media channels, undercut the decentralized approach to breaking up big tech?
I think it does the opposite. It doesn't undercut it. It enforces that. Hey, real quick. If you give me money on a super chat, YouTube takes like 20% of it. If you give me money on PayPal, PayPal takes like 1% of it, right? You can organize a better way to transfer money that doesn't require YouTube. Just saying. So, but when it comes to funding, obviously YouTube takes a cut because they list my content. So that's the cut that they take. If we find a way to organize where, say, we don't need YouTube to list our content and we can find outside revenue streams that don't require a big corporation to funnel through a database or whatever, or have people funnel through a centralized database, I think there's a lot more money to have in a decentralized world.
Okay, and then this question is for Niko. Why didn't Dore step back from the public eye when it became apparent that his association with Force the Vote was directly preventing the organization from picking up as much steam?
Because he knows exactly what I know, that it's a bullshit excuse. Force the Vote trended #1. It wasn't about Jimmy Dore. What it was about was the fact that when Mike Pokin, he's talking about Mike Pokin, everybody actually supported it. Everybody.
Is it Mark or Mike?
Mark, excuse me. I always say Mike, but Mark, I know Mike Pokin, that's why. But Mark Pokin, when he was going after Mark Pokin, nobody cared. I mean, everybody was like, yeah, support this. Jank and all the people who hate him, the same people who were attacking Bree, they all were supporting Force the Vote. And even if they even were literally saying, Sam Cedar, who is his #1 stan hater, yeah, man, I don't like Jimmy, but this is actually.
I would like to be #1. I would just like to say
that's a lot of that's 3-4 years of competing with Sam.
I'm willing to put in the work. I'm willing to put in the work.
But with when Justin Jackson, the running back for the LA Chargers, tagged AOC, and then AOC made excuses that then she didn't realize that Justin Jackson was going to go on Jimmy Dore right after, and basically just like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, I can't believe that you're even making up these excuses right now, given that we're literally taking your advice. That means when then AOC got involved, and all of a sudden, whoa, no, we can't say anything critical or demand anything of a representative who's sitting in Congress right now, who's about to once again wield power that we've never wielded before, because we never once again expected these abstentions to kick in like they did during the speakership vote. And so he understood that it's more important to use his platform to expose people, given this false idea that, maybe if Jimmy would step back, then it wouldn't be a problem. Jimmy wasn't at the organizing rally when we were in person, because everybody's talking about, you're organizing online. Yeah, that's cool. Where were y'all in person then? Because y'all had no problem using Brianna Joy's Gray account when y'all want her to retweet y'all and da-da-da-da.
I would just say that money is a big factor. A lot of poor people don't have the money to go.
But that's fine. But you were just slamming it for having 50 people. So which one is it? It can't be both, right? So it could be both, which is also fine. But from your perspective, you were slamming it for not having a lot of people. And I would argue that money was a huge factor, but also the people who were focusing on Jimmy were the problem. Instead of focusing on healthcare and holding our politicians accountable, once again, these are not our friends, and I cannot stress that enough. So Jimmy,
Tulsi Gabbard included.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Tulsi Gabbard's our goddamn friend. She advocated for the best single payer plan on the market.
Oh, so she's the only friend. Is it because she's no longer in Congress that she's your friend?
She was out of Congress when it was time to force the vote, And trust me, she probably wouldn't have voted for Nancy Pelosi just off the strength of just not getting along with her that much. But either way, why the fact that we have to keep bringing up Tulsi so you can avoid holding AOC accountable?
We should hold her accountable.
I keep telling you, and once again, you can't. The person who had the power when she had it tried to fix everything that we're talking about right now. The people that you keep simping for by trying to bring up Tulsi every time I bring up AOC or bring up Bernie, they have the power. They refuse to fight. They refuse to do anything. They want to pretend like Republicans are the problem. Republicans aren't the reason we don't have health care. Republicans would probably have to get on board with that. But you can keep bringing up Tulsi to deflect. But the fact of the matter is, your people that you campaign for, that you like, that you work for, that you worked for at one point or canvassed for at one point, who were in the Senate or in the House, just voted for a bill to give us crumbs while reading it. And then when we try to say, you know what, okay, all that, we'll put it to the past. Just give us fucking healthcare in the middle of a pandemic. That's it. That's all we need. We can work on everything else after. Can't even do that. And you're still worried about Tulsi? That's this the priority.
I'm not worried about her. I just think it's an interesting.
We can't worry about healthcare because of Jimmy. We can't because of Tulsi. Like, when is it going to be the issue? Because everybody keeps telling me that like people like myself are divisive, but I'm talking about the policy still. And even as we're talking about policy,
well, actually, you're not talking about policy. You're talking about strategy, policy. And there's a core difference.
Even
we
if
agree on the policy.
About policy, you're still saying,
strategy.
Even as the question is about policy, you're still making about versus Tulsi, versus
It's about strategy. The whole conversation is
strategy. Have a chance to influence that policy. So what does it matter? We're talking about this policy right here. Stop deflecting. Stop pretending like these people are your allies because they're not. Because based off of policy, they're not, and that's fine. But I'm not saying that you can never be allied with them. I'm not saying you can never work with them. I'm not saying you can't even like them as a person. But like, let's not pretend these people are something they're not, and then pretend Tulsi's something she isn't. Because once again, character difference is, if you want to like link that to policy and consistency. Like, yeah, Tulsi makes mistakes. Bernie and AOC are making calculated moves to undermine the left, work with neoliberals and neocons, and once again, pretend as if it is okay to elect a literal segregationist, warmongering, sex pest, author of the 94 crime bill, author of the Patriot Act, two bills that are still haunting us to this very day and that are both about to get ramped up.
Again, you've said that like 5 times. So, I mean, hey, if you're not taking money for it, you know, you should ask someone for a paycheck. You've got very consistent talking points. I'm just saying.
Because I'm a black man and I'm telling you,
okay.
You are just downplaying this idea that the segregationist in office that your guy is endorsing is
no. I hate him. I hate Joe Biden.
The literal apathy that you are demonstrating is exactly why black people are so turned off to the leftist and leftist movement, and leftist organizing.
I've been sexually harassed. I've been sexually assaulted.
I didn't say you haven't.
I don't like the idea of having a predator in office.
I'm not talking about your experience. I'm talking about mine right now. So yeah, I'm gonna keep saying it because
I know you're talking about.
I don't downplay for the convenience of the side I play for the party I'm loyal to. I don't downplay the reality of a criminal, whether like especially if it's affecting my life. And you shouldn't probably be downplaying it either, just to back the Dems. Like it's a problem. Period. If
I don't know why
as
you
a
keep
trans person,
that to me.
no, if you as a trans person, me as a black person had the record that Joe Biden had, we would never be in power. He is only in power because of the party that you back and your good friend.
I don't back Democrats.
Yeah, no. You said that there's a tandem difference, and you back Bernie, and you back the idea that Joe Biden is somehow not a fascist. You can only think that Joe Biden is not a fascist by the definition of fascism if you think that a D inherently makes him different.
I understand that the definition of fascism is a big trigger point for you, so I won't go into that. But I don't think Joe Biden's a fascist.
Okay, all right. Let's
you can define it. Oh, well, no, can we give her? Let's give her something to define it. Go ahead, define it.
Fascism is it's not an authoritarian over abuse of power. Fascism.
Oh, really? That's a new one. Okay, go ahead. Please elaborate.
Right. Fascism is a very complicated series of events that I'm glad you're fine. You don't have to mute the mic to laugh. I appreciate the laughter being audible. It's, it makes me happy. Joe Biden, whether or not he's authoritarian, is not a fascist because he doesn't have a cult of personality around him that have a bunch of people that are willing to die for him. Again, 6 people died at the Capitol attack in the name of Donald Trump. Someone was tread on to death while holding a "Don't Tread on Me" flag in the name of Donald Trump, right? Joe Biden can't even fill up a fucking gym of people to go see him. No one likes Joe Biden. And again, I don't back the Democrats. I don't like the Democratic Party as it's currently composed. I think that they are the lesser of 2 evils, and that is an argument I'm willing to have. That is not to say that Joe Biden is a good person. Everything that you're saying about Joe Biden when it comes to him being a bad person is absolutely correct. He's a sex pest. He's probably a rapist. He's definitely a racist, and he's garbage. Absolutely. There's going to be no pushback on me on that one. However, I personally have been at the receiving end of neo-Nazi violence that has been very, very much so linked to Donald Trump's movement. I have not been on the receiving end of violence from Joe Biden supporters, but I know people have, and I understand that people have those experiences. If someone was, physically assaulted by a Biden supporter, I'd be interested to know about that. I think Trump is building a fascist movement that, to be honest, right, can be in or out of the government, which is why I do think it's so interesting that he was banned on Twitter, because that does limit his ability to peddle his ideas. But we can get into that tomorrow if you want to do a round two. But real quick, again, fascism. Joe Biden is not a fascist because he doesn't have the cult of personality. I think that is the main distinction. If you don't have a group of people that are willing to go out there. Now, if you want to talk about the military being that group of people, maybe, but I would say that that's more authoritarian than fascism. You're muted. You're muted.
Funny because I like this joke. So like Vouch gets embarrassed and y'all think that this joke is actually funny when none of y'all actually know what the definition of fascism is. To say that there's no authoritarianism in fascism is hilarious. Like even in the Wikipedia,
I said that.
Pause.
We can debate it tomorrow.
Hold on. Let me finish. I gave you a chance to define it. You gave me some weird ass definition that wasn't even definition. So just the basic definition.
All I want to say is, Niko, give your definition of fascism, and we're probably going to wrap up.
We can do part two, though.
So it says far right, authoritarian ultranationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimentation of society and of the economy, which came into prominence in the early 20th century Europe via Mussolini. Okay, so if you want to take the most basic definition, you want to take one of the key elements, which is authoritarianism, out of that. But once again,
did not say
you
that.
have to
mischaracterizing what I said. You
no,
interrupted
that's what you said.
me.
You literally said,
I said it's not singularly.
Oh, no, you literally said that.
I literally did not.
Those are your words. So anyway, even if you want to go by the 14 points, even if you want to go
it's
by
only 14, okay when the man is mischaracterized.
Let me finish
when
my statement.
When the man is mischaracterized, they're allowed to speak over. When the woman is mischaracterized, they're not allowed to speak over. I understand.
So you don't want me to finish
my own words.
Can we mute the mic?
Okay.
Can I finish it? Thank you.
Can we finish this?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So like I was saying, even if we're going to go by the 14 points, the amount of times that corporatism and authoritarianism are brought up, like I figured that you would at least see like intersectionality between all these issues. Like just because he doesn't have a cult of personality, like maybe on the ground, I would say that he's had to have a cult of personality to be, once again, the most popular incumbent in history by the standards of the election that you trust. Okay. So yeah, he has that. But more importantly, he has a cult of personality within power. Then he has a cult of personality within corporate power. And he has the authority to make either of them do what he wants to. That is literally a fascist. The 94 crime bill was him fucking black people over for the private prison industry and then giving them authority to enforce it. That is fascism. The Patriot Act is fascism. Why the fuck do we have to have these conversations like we don't know obvious facts? Once again, to try and create some invisible distinction other than the fact that Trump is a loud neo-fascist and then Biden is a low-talking, forgetful civility fascist.
Right. I don't know what a civility fascist is. If you want to say the United States of America is going to become fascist regardless of the leader, maybe. I'd be open to that. But really, we're talking about personalities here. Joe Biden's not a fascist. Donald Trump is a fascist. Dictatorial power, as you mentioned, is an extremely valuable concept here. Now, when I said fascism is not just authoritarianism, the key word there, and I may have missed it, it's possible. It's near my bedtime. It's possible I stuttered, but you wouldn't let me interrupt you, so I have to do this after the fact. So I didn't say fascism had no authoritarianism. I didn't say fascism has nothing to do with authoritarianism. I said fascism is not singularly authoritarianism, especially when it comes to, again...
Yeah, you didn't say that, because I would have told you, yeah, duh. But you didn't.
Well, I mean, if you would have, again, it's possible I may have misspoken. That's totally possible. But I would have liked to have cleared that up before you went on this little weirdo, bizarro rant about that.
All right.
And again, I do find it questionable. But okay, speaking of questions, do we want to do this again tomorrow? Because I'm down.
If you want to do the Tulsa's policies versus Bernie's policies tomorrow, yeah, I would absolutely do it. I mean, what's tomorrow? Wednesday? Yeah, I got time.
All right.
Well, folks, you heard it. Tune back in tomorrow for more of this. Thank you both for taking the time to be here and to do this. This has been very interesting. It ran a little longer than expected, but you know, we got into it, and that's what we were here for. So
this is the battlefield of ideas.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Appreciate you hosting it.
Yeah, of course. Niko, do you want to plug anything? Or
You
like
can follow me on Twitter at Niko, NIKOCSFB. You can also follow me, subscribe to my channel on YouTube at the MCSC Network with Niko House.
And Andrea, do you want to plug anything? What you got going on?
Well, I've got my podcast, Above It All, and I'm probably going to do another one in about 10 minutes. So if anyone's watching this live, check out the channel, and I'll be back. And I want to cover the House. I think the House is going to vote on some stuff. Might be fun to watch. And maybe there's other events we could discuss as well. I don't know. But yeah, that's it.
And if anyone wants to support me buying some weed after this, patreon.com/notsafe. 100% independent media funded by people like you. Like I always like to say, it's like PBS before the oil money. So get on over there and help us out. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Bye.